What's your best NSFW story that happened while at work? I was the shift manager at a pizza place and things were slow, and we didn't have any orders. We were all standing around. One of my drivers gets a surprise visit from his girl and asks if he can drive her down to the Winn-Dixie parking lot to get it on. I shrug and tell him to hurry back. He said, "Oh, I won't be long. Self-burn. Those are rare." Did tech support that involved remoting into people's computers to fix shit, so we didn't have to sit there and walk them through everything. This meant that their entire computer screen was visible on our screen. One day I was just getting back from lunch, walking past a coworker's desk, when I saw full-on dick and balls and ass in the cowgirl position bouncing up and down on his screen. Coworker was just sitting there watching it with a shit-eating grin on his face. Turns out that this particular customer was having playback issues with his porn and had called us to get help. I drive for Uber and Lyft sometimes. Years back I picked up a very drunk girl from the downtown bar scene. She bathed all over herself shortly after she got in the car, took off her bath-covered clothes, then passed out. I didn't realize she'd stripped off all her clothes until I stopped to drop her off. I drive a big SUV, and she sat in the way back third row for some reason, drunk and all. I helped her get her clothes back on and inside her house, and never saw her again. She gave me 5 stars. I used to work in a prosecutor's office. Disclosure clerks would often go through material given to us by police in order to build files that would later be used during court proceedings. Disclosure usually included police reports, witness statements, and the like, but occasionally it included electronic evidence like pictures, videos, or things taken off of a seized cell phone. One day one of the more sweet and innocent disclosure clerks was going through things and saw a picture from the accused cell phone that she couldn't quite identify. She wondered if it could be marijuana. It was, but decided to ask a few colleagues. When they came to identify what was in the picture, she opened the wrong image, an up-close gif of a woman deep-throating a guy with such skill that you could see a bulge in her throat. The disclosure clerk was mortified, but couldn't help but laugh in embarrassment. She then opened the right image to find out it was indeed marijuana. A running joke in the office was born, namely that marijuana isn't always what it looks like. About 1.5 years ago my company decided to upgrade our client database. The process involved me staying on the phone with the creator of the software for hours while he went over our data tables and whatnot to make sure our data would migrate correctly once the update was completed. These meetings were particularly dull because I just sat there while he would basically copy our information into these blank templates. We were on GoToMeeting or something like that, so I could see the work he was doing and answer any questions he had about our data. During one of these long phone calls he needed some additional information about one of the tables we were migrating our data to. He opens up Chrome and I immediately see Pornhub in his recent tab shortcuts. Before I could even to realize what I actually saw, the guy went and clicked on the link. Suddenly my computer screen is the squirting category of Pornhub, and I just silently laughed to myself. I was on mute. Once the tab is open for a couple of seconds he realizes what he did and goes, "Oops, that's not it," and quickly closes the browser. Had an employee named Rob. He was buddies with my boss, Phil, who sort of strong-armed me into hiring Rob. Part of Rob's sales territory was the adult services section of the newspapers, basically escorts and erotic massage. Over a few months, Rob started getting deep into the shifty, dark corners of that world. He started accepting sex and drugs in exchange for ads from the less scrupulous escorts. One Friday afternoon I'm closing up shop. Needed to clean up the kitchen a bit, so went to the utility closet to grab some cleaning gear, and there's Rob getting head from a methed out escort. Caught one of my employees having sex with her boyfriend in her car. Both were completely nude. It was 80s model Ford Escort, and she was 6 feet tall. What gave her away? Well, someone noticed her bare ass pressed against a window. Oh, I should mention said car was parked in the front row of the parking lot, facing a wall of windows. This was the early 90s, so she was given a warning and sent home without pay. I did fire her the next week when she was caught doing it again. Just thinking about all the NSFW stuff that happened in those days at work makes me laugh. Working at an internet startup a few years ago. Small US staff, me, tech support, account management, sales guy, super sexist, racist, CFO, CEO. We're all at a trade show for a couple days. We do dinner after the show one night, and all of us, but the CEO share a cab back to our hotel. On the way, the sales guy, either sober or a ridiculous lightweight, starts talking about how he wants to get laid. Cab driver offers to take us to a club where we can get whatever we want, but the CFO and I are not down. So sales guy whips out his phone and starts looking for an escort on Craigslist. He's going through his options, narrating the choices, finally picks one and calls her up. Right there in the cab in front of our CFO, he negotiates the price with her like a cheapskate and gives her the name of the hotel. He spends the rest of the ride back bragging about how often he does this and how good he is at it. Next morning, at the show, and in front of our CEO, he starts complaining that the woman never showed. When the CEO asked for clarification, sales guy proudly explained he was fired a week after. I worked on a ship, and on ships equipment is wired together through many spaces. Spaces are just rooms on a ship. One piece of equipment may be controlled from more than one space. Those spaces are used to work in, and usually, people will use the spaces for personal uses as well. Think card games, TV, reading, things like that. One day I'm on watch and a high ranked do-gooder asshole on a different station says a breaker needs to be flipped for a training exercise. I know the space it's in, and I know one of my buddies is probably fucking off in that space. I know that sycophant will run and tattle if he sees my buddy playing games or something. I speak up and say I'm on my way there anyway, he'll trip it. I walk into the space and move toward the breaker just to see my buddy sitting in a chair and a girl's bare ass in his lap. Dude was balls deep in a shipmate. They both scramble, not expecting anyone to come through. I just laugh and tell him that he owes me a big one because it was the sycophant that was supposed to come up, and he would have been giddy as a schoolgirl to rat him out to everyone. I was working at a publishing place at a temp job. I was doing data entry, transferring a lot of records from paper to hard drives. There were 3 of us. 2 of us were guys. The girl and I were working in the same large office. The other guy was working across the hall in his own office. The work was pretty boring and easy. We would talk a lot as we worked. Eventually the talk turned to sex stuff, and I disclosed that I'm into BDSM. She was fascinated, and I told her she could ask whatever she wanted to. She asked me to spank her and pinch her nipples as she bent over her desk. So I did. Girl I dated for a while in college had an insatiable kink about having sex in public, more specifically at my place of work. I managed the store alone a lot of times. She would come in unannounced, usually when no customers were in the store, walk to the little back room we had, and put herself on the desk, spread her legs and beg me to fuck her, which I always did. Other times she would come in and get on her knees right behind the register and give me a BJ. She was wild and fun, and we were just young and dumb. Never got caught. Worked with a girl who was very fit and petite. She used to always joke that the dishwashing sinks were so big she could bathe in them. Her last shift, before she left for college, she was closing the store. There were only 3 of us in the building. We finished closing. She punched out and proceeded to strip down naked and climbed into the sinks and started spraying herself with the dish sprayer, AMD lathering soap all over herself in a suggestive manner. That was a great close. One co-worker was trying to explain the placement of an ex-coworker's tattoo. English is not her first language, so she was having trouble coming up with a way to say it's big and high up on her thigh. She decided to demonstrate on a nearby male coworker the area she was trying to describe, and ended up getting more than she bargained for. She felt something, continued to pat to try and figure it out, then asked in her beautiful Spanish accent, "Is that your gun?" He's a Marine and no one would be surprised if he had a permit to carry at all times. He just looked straight ahead, smiled, and said you could buy a guy dinner first. You can't get a permit for a weapon like this, lol. I worked at a urine lab for a while. One of the 22-year-old secretaries plugged her phone in the computer to charge. It auto-uploaded her entire picture collection to our company Dropbox. The entire company had access and got notifications in real time. Hundreds upon hundreds of nudes. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for I upload daily and suggest what subreddit I should cover next. Thank you and happy travels.